This aircraft, weighing more than 200 tons without any engine, on the dark Atlantic Ocean, was just a glider, a deep sea thousands of feet below, the darkness of the night above, and no runway to land nearby. Until this day, there was no recorded case of a fuel leak depleting all the fuel in commercial aviation. There was no pilot who had dealt with such a situation. No training manual, no checklist, no precedent. There was nothing to tell the pilots what to do next. Hello, August 23, 2001. It was around 11 p.m. Toronto Pearson International Airport was in a mess. In the summer, there was a crowd at the gates. Families, couples, students, everyone was boarding from different gates for their flights. And at one of these gates, Air Transat, a Canadian Airlines flight TSC 236 was parked. A regular overnight flight from Toronto to Portugal. 293 passengers and 13 crew members. That means a total of 306 people. Most of the passengers were Canadians of Portuguese origin. They were going to Portugal during the summer vacation. On August 24th at 12:52 a.m., the flight took off from Toronto. 40 at 8, cleared for takeoff, 24-hour, Transat 236 Heavy. It had to cross the entire Atlantic Ocean to reach Lisbon, Portugal. A few minutes after takeoff, the plane reaches a height of 39,000 feet and moves on in its journey. The passengers had dinner, some watched movies, the kids went to sleep, and the cabin lights dimmed. Just like a normal transatlantic flight, this aircraft was passing peacefully over the Atlantic Ocean in the dark. Everything seemed normal, but in the meantime, something was happening in the cockpit that would make this flight one of the most dangerous in aviation history. The people sitting on this flight did not know that a time bomb was ticking. All the fuel in this plane was about to run out over the sea, and both its engines were about to shut down. On top of that, the flight was commanded by a pilot who was once charged with drug smuggling. He had been sentenced to years in prison, but no one on the plane knew about this secret. This problem started about 9 days ago. A few millimeters apart, the fate of this plane was written. On August 15, 2001, the maintenance team of Air Transat, during a routine inspection of the plane, found metal chips in the oil system of its right engine. It was a very serious sign that something was wrong with the engine. 2 days later, on August 17th, they found metal particles again. The airline had no option. It was clear that the engine would have to be changed. But the problem was that Air Transat didn't have any spare engines available, so they took an engine on loan from Rolls-Royce. And this is where the real trouble begins. Imagine that your phone's charger is damaged, and you use a similar charger which looks the same, but the inside is different. In this case, your charger will work for a few days, but it will eventually short-circuit. This is exactly what happened to this plane. The new replacement engine from Rolls-Royce was of an old design. The system of the plane was of a new design. Everything looked the same from the outside, but the fitting of the fuel and hydraulic tubes inside was different. And when the Air Transat engine was delivered, the inspection didn't notice this difference. The engine change started at midnight on August 17th. It was necessary to complete the work by Sunday afternoon, because the plane had a scheduled flight at that time, meaning the mechanics had a tight deadline. As soon as the mechanics started the engine change, a problem arose. The hydraulic pump of the plane wasn't fitting on the new engine because a fuel tube of the engine was in the way. The lead technician, when he searched the parts list for the Airbus, found out that the fuel and hydraulic tubes of this engine were different from the other systems of the plane. The man couldn't understand how to fit the old engine with the new pump, so he tried to open the Rolls-Royce manual on 3 different computers. But the network was down, so it wouldn't open. But here is a shocking thing. The service bulletin manual was actually available on offline CDs. But our lead technician didn't know about these CDs. The document that the lives of hundreds of people depended on was in the same building, but no one tried to find it. The time pressure was too high. The plane had to be ready by Sunday afternoon, so the technician took a shortcut. He installed new fuel tubes on the engine, but the hydraulic tube was of the old design. So on one engine there were 2 tubes of different designs, which were not made for each other. It was clearly written in the Rolls-Royce service bulletin that the fuel tube and hydraulic tube should always be changed as a set. But due to the network failure, unfortunately no one read this service bulletin. When the hydraulic system was pressurized, the hydraulic line's flange would rotate and come closer to the fuel line. 2 metal tubes that should never touch each other started to rub against each other. But no one noticed this. After the installation was complete, everything looked normal. There was no leak and no warning. That is why the plane was released for flight. After the engine was changed, the plane flew many flights without anyone knowing that it had a ticking time bomb. Due to vibration and pressure, both the tubes would come close to each other and rub together. Slowly, the fuel tube wall was worn down. It was just a matter of time before it completely broke. Let's go back to the night of August 24th. Flight 236 was flying over the Atlantic Ocean. Everything was normal. 46.9 metric tons of fuel was added to the flight, which was 5.5 metric tons more than the fuel required. But at 4:38 a.m., the flight data recorder noted that the fuel was decreasing rapidly. Due to the friction between the hydraulic line and the fuel line over several hours, an L-shaped crack formed on the wall of the fuel tube, which started leaking fuel. But neither did the cockpit ring any alarms, nor did any warning lights go off. The reason behind this was that there was no direct sensor to detect fuel leaks in the Airbus A330 at the time. Gradually, the crack grew bigger, and fuel started leaking faster. The leak rate reached 13 metric tons per hour. None of the 306 people on board the aircraft knew that the plane's fuel was silently pouring into the Atlantic Ocean. It was only at 5:03 a.m. that the crew noticed unusual oil readings in the right engine. The fuel was leaking from this engine, but the pilots wondered why. They thought it was a computer fault. 5:33 a.m., about 4 hours and 40 minutes after takeoff, an advisory message flashed in the cockpit. The crew found that the fuel balance in the left and right wing tanks had deteriorated. In comparison to the left side, the fuel on the right side was quite low. This is how fuel imbalance occurs in modern aircraft. To fix this, there is a standard procedure. You take out the checklist and follow the steps. The crew thought it wasn't a big deal, and they would handle the issue. But they made another big mistake here. The biggest mistake of the entire incident, which would turn the situation into a disaster. The crew didn't follow the checklist. Instead, they followed the procedure from memory. It was clearly written in the checklist that if there was a doubt about a fuel leak, then you follow the fuel leak procedure, not the fuel imbalance procedure. But because they were working from memory, they missed this note. To fix the fuel imbalance, the crew opened the crossfeed valve. This meant that the left wing tank's remaining fuel was also going straight out of the right wing leak. The fuel on both sides started leaking out of the same hole. The problem the pilots tried to fix actually doubled the problem. Here a shocking coincidence occurs. Exactly 4 years prior, on August 24, 1997, an Air France A320 plane had a fuel leak issue. The French authorities recommended that an automated fuel leak warning system be installed on the Airbus. Airbus amended the procedures, but the automated leak warning system was not installed. 4 years later, the exact same scenario was repeated on Flight 236. And if the warning system had been installed, this situation would not have happened. The captain expected the fuel readings to stabilize after the crossfeed, but the numbers kept falling. The fuel was decreasing on the left side as well. He couldn't understand what was going on. The captain told the cabin crew to look out the windows, check the wings and engines, and see if fuel was leaking. But it was dark at night and the sea was black. Nothing was visible through the windows. The people on the flight were unaware of this. They thought that breakfast would be served soon, and the plane would land in Lisbon in peace. But at 5:45 a.m., so much fuel had leaked that it was impossible to reach Lisbon. Command of this flight was held by Captain Robert Pichet, who had a flying experience of 16,800 hours, and his co-pilot Dirk de Jager had a flying experience of 4,800 hours. Interestingly, de Jager had worked as a bush pilot as well. He had experience taking off and landing in jungles and on lakes without any runway. In such a situation, seeing the fuel leak, they decided to divert the flight. In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, there are some small islands that not many people know about. The Azores Islands. Captain Pichet decided to divert the flight to the largest airport in the Azores. It was a military airbase. 6 a.m., the pilots informed ATC that they had only 7 metric tons of fuel left. Transat 236 Heavy declaring a fuel emergency. The largest airport in the Azores was still hundreds of miles away. The crew still couldn't understand the actual fuel leak problem. At 6:13 a.m., the plane was still at a height of 34,000 feet, but it was descending towards Lagos. The pilots hoped that they would somehow reach it. But then, all of a sudden, the right engine stopped working due to fuel starvation. At a height of 34,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, this twin-engine aircraft was now operating on just one engine. ETOPS, Extended Range Twin-Engine Operations Performance Standards, were made for this condition, according to which, even after a single engine failure, at a lower speed using the other engine, the plane could reach the nearest airport. But the problem was that it wasn't a normal single-engine failure. The left engine's fuel was almost empty. Your quantity is reaching 0. We are losing engine number 2, I don't believe this. Meanwhile, the captain begins his single-engine descent. Some passengers in the cabin noticed the engine sound changed, but they still didn't know what was happening. The lights started flickering on and off, which I thought was kind of odd and strange. 26 a.m. 13 minutes after the right engine stopped, The left engine also stopped. This aircraft, full of 306 people, had become a glider. This flight was still 144 kilometers from the airport in the Azores, 20 meters away. As soon as the other engine shut down, the cockpit screens turned dark. The main electrical generators were off. All the cabin lights went out. The entire plane was in the dark. People panicked. What was going on? Mayday, mayday, mayday. We have lost both engines due to fuel starvation. We are gliding now. The captain now realized that if they wanted to save the lives of 305 people, they would have to land the flight safely without either engine. But in history, no commercial passenger jet had ever attempted a powerless glide this far. There was no second chance. If the plane couldn't reach the airport, it would crash into the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean. After both engines shut down, the plane switched to its emergency power source. The ram air turbine was automatically deployed. If you remember, this was also mentioned in the Air India crash video. It is a small wind turbine that generates emergency power, so that basic instruments and some hydraulic systems can operate. To operate the RAT, the minimum speed of the plane should be 140 knots. Captain Pichet told air traffic control that they might have to land in the ocean. When the engine stopped, the cabin was suddenly covered in silence. The constant humming that is heard in the background of every aircraft had disappeared. The silence was so deep that people's ears started ringing. Augustine and Romero, both 57, heard the engines shut down and thought of their daughters, who were in Canada. The crew members were also scared. A flight attendant came to Romero and said, "Please help me, please help me." A 24-year-old helicopter pilot trainee, Daniel Rodriguez, heard the crew members shouting at each other and the passengers. Vasco dos Santos, a student of 18 years old who was on this flight, started to recall plane crash movies, the ones he had watched in the theaters. Today, the same thing was happening to him. For the next few minutes, the passengers were sitting in the dark, without an engine, gliding on the air currents. They didn't know what was below or what was going to happen next. After a while, the passengers were told that the plane might land in the sea. "Everybody please, I need your attention. We are preparing to ditch the plane. I need you to put on your life jackets right now." The captain had officially accepted that the plane might land in the sea. The flight director, who is the senior-most cabin crew member, takes out the emergency action plan checklist. The cabin crew is told to take out their life jackets and get ready for the passenger briefing. Prepare the cabin. The cabin is slowly depressurizing. We need to put our oxygen masks on. Crew members ask passengers to put on their life jackets. Instructions for the brace positions are given in English and French. There were Portuguese passengers on this flight. Some of them didn't know either language. Because of the language barrier, they were struggling to understand what was actually happening. Life jackets also had problems. Some jackets had a single strap, some had two, and passengers were unable to find the straps in the elastic bands. Many passengers were physically helped by the crew members to put on the jackets. When the crew started demonstrating emergency water landing procedures, some people started screaming. Some people turned pale and many people started praying. Grace Romero held the hand of the passenger next to her, hoping that everything would be fine. She just wanted to avoid falling into the ocean. Passenger Margaret McKinnon remembered Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961. She saw in a documentary how in 1996 an aircraft crashed into the Indian Ocean. It broke apart as soon as it touched the water, and everyone was killed. McKinnon knew from the documentary that there was very little chance of surviving a water crash. She accepted death, but her husband Belgakis refused to accept it. He planned that if they fell into the ocean, they would exit the ship and swim to the shore. They believed that even if they fell into the sea, they could swim. They could survive. He told McKinnon, "We'll need our shoes. We'll need our shoes." A controlled landing of an aircraft in water is called ditching. It is one of the most dangerous emergency procedures in aviation. Percent of occupants survive the initial impact of ditching. The data shows this. But due to drowning and hypothermia, the overall survival rate falls to only 76%. The problem was that it was average data, and Flight 236's case was very different from the average. The flight was flying in the dark. It was flying over the Atlantic Ocean. In the night ditching, the pilots couldn't see the waves' height or surface. Apart from that, even in August, the water in this sea is so cold that people could die of hypothermia. The windows outside were black and dark. No stars, no light, no land, no signs. Just thousands of feet deep below the cold Atlantic Ocean. Some passengers looked at their family photos. Some closed their eyes. A mother held her child tight. Captain Pichet and co-pilot de Jager were working on the emergency checklist, preparing for the visual runway approach. Without engine power, the pilots had only one chance to land on the runway. There was no go-around option. At 6:31 a.m., the pilots contacted Lagos approach. The plane was at 27,000 feet, and Lagos was 33 nautical miles away. At 6:36 a.m., the crew saw the runway lights and reported that the plane was only 14 nautical miles away. The captain told them that they had seen the runway flashing lights from a distance, and believed they had enough altitude to glide to the airport. At 6:43 a.m., the landing gear came down, and then at 6:45 a.m., the plane landed at the military airbase. From the dual engine failure to the landing, the plane flew for about 19 minutes without engine power. In commercial aviation history, it was unprecedented, and it was the biggest record so far. But the landing of the plane was not smooth at all. Without engine reverse thrust, they needed extreme braking. The main wheels locked, the tires deflated. The wheel bearings were also damaged. The landing gear started to spark and flame. The friction caused a small fire, but fortunately, it was extinguished quickly. The landing was so violent that the passengers were thrown forward. Some people's belongings fell to the floor, and then as soon as the plane stopped, the cabin started clapping. In less than 2 minutes, all 306 people were evacuated from the plane. Not a single person died. There were 2 serious injuries and 16 minor injuries, but they were mostly sustained during the evacuation via the slides. You cared about the safety of your passengers. After landing, Captain Pichet was seen as a hero. However, after a few days, Pichet's past was exposed and the media was in a state of panic. It was found out that about 20 years ago, Captain Pichet was arrested for drug transport in America. He was sentenced to 5 years in Georgia, and he was pardoned only recently. This news raised the question of how an ex-drug smuggler could become a commercial airline pilot. But despite his past, he remained a hero for the passengers. After this incident, the Transport Minister of Canada fined Air Transat the largest fine in Canadian aviation history, $250,000. Besides this, the passengers filed a class action lawsuit for $30 million. The lawsuit stated that the passengers suffered such severe trauma that they became physically ill and would probably endure the effects for the rest of their lives. This story of Flight 236 is one of the most incredible survival stories in aviation history. When everything was over, 306 people were standing on the airbase in the Azores. Some were just looking at the ground, as if they couldn't believe there was solid ground beneath their feet. Like every flight disaster, there wasn't a single mistake that made this night possible, but many failures in a row. Rolls-Royce's missing warning, the shortcut made by the mechanics, the manual that no one read, the checklist that the crew followed from memory, and the leak warning system that should have been installed 4 years prior, but was not. If you liked this video, then the story of Flight 243 is just as interesting. An aircraft whose roof was ripped off in mid-air. Now imagine you are sitting in a flight and the roof falls away. What will you do in such a situation? And the most important question is, what will a pilot do?